The midnight stagecoach. The setting. It was 1873, a time when the Cariboo Road was the lifeline of the gold rush towns scattered across British Columbia's rugged interior. By day, the road bustled with wagons and prospectors eager to strike it rich. By night, it was a different story, a lonely, treacherous path shrouded in mist and haunted by tales of bandits, wild animals, and worse. Travelers were warned to avoid the road after sundown. But for those desperate or reckless enough, there was one stagecoach that offered passage after dark, a black creaking vehicle drawn by a team of midnight black horses. It was said the coach always appeared just when you needed it most, its lanterns glowing like fireflies in the gloom. Those who boarded, however, were never the same. The stranger's story. Edgar Milne was a travelling merchant, a man used to long, solitary journeys between the mining camps. One fateful evening, his mule threw a shoe, leaving him stranded miles from the nearest settlement. The sun dipped below the horizon, and a dense fog rolled in, wrapping the road in an eerie stillness. As Edgar cursed his luck and prepared to make camp, he heard it, the distant clatter of hooves and the low rumble of wheels. A stagecoach materialized out of the mist, its black body gleaming in the moonlight. The driver, a gaunt man in a wide-brimmed hat, tipped his head in silent acknowledgement. Without hesitation, Edgar flagged it down. "I'm heading to Barkerville," Edgar said. The driver nodded, but said nothing. Edgar climbed aboard, settling into the dimly lit interior. 4 other passengers sat in silence, their faces obscured by shadows. The air inside was heavy, carrying the faint scent of earth and decay. "Rough night for travel," Edgar ventured, trying to break the tension. The woman across from him, her face pale and drawn, whispered, "Every night is rough for the living." Edgar frowned. "Pardon?" But she said no more, and the others stared at him with unsettling intensity. The stage lurched forward, the rhythmic clatter of hooves breaking the oppressive silence. The passengers. As the journey progressed, Edgar grew increasingly uneasy. The other passengers began to speak in hushed tones, sharing stories of betrayal, greed, and regret. One man, his voice hoarse and trembling, described how he had cheated his partner out of a gold claim, only to be found dead with his throat slit. A woman in a tattered dress spoke of a child she abandoned in the wilderness, her sobs echoing in the confined space. Each tale was more chilling than the last, and Edgar began to notice something strange. The faces of the passengers seemed to change as they spoke, their features becoming skeletal, their eyes hollow pits of darkness. When the final passenger, a portly man with a sweat-streaked face, confessed to poisoning his wife for her inheritance, his flesh seemed to wither before Edgar's eyes, leaving behind a grinning skull. Edgar clutched his satchel, heart pounding. "What kind of stagecoach is this?" The pale woman turned to him, her smile ghastly. "The kind that carries souls to their reckoning." The truth revealed. The stagecoach came to a sudden halt. The door swung open and the driver appeared, his face now fully visible, pale, sunken, and eyeless. "This is your stop," he said in a voice like dry leaves. Edgar stumbled out onto the road, his knees weak. The stagecoach vanished into the fog, leaving him alone. When the mist cleared, he realized he was standing in the middle of a graveyard. Tombstones jutted from the earth like jagged teeth, and fresh soil covered an open grave at his feet. The headstone bore his name, Edgar Milne, 1827 to 1873. Panic seized him as he backed away, only to collide with a pale woman from the stagecoach. "You've been weighed and measured, Edgar," she said softly, "and now you belong to the road." The next morning, travelers along the Cariboo Road found Edgar's mule grazing by the roadside, but the merchant was never seen again. Rumors spread of the midnight stagecoach, and its legend grew. A carriage for the lost and damned, driven by the unseen hand of fate. Those who ignored the warnings and dared to travel the road at night swore they could hear the distant creak of wheels and the ghostly echo of Edgar Milne's cries, forever bound to the eternal journey. The Ghost Train of Bitter Gorge. The setting. The year was 1884, and the construction of a railway through the treacherous Bitter Gorge in British Columbia was nearing completion. The line was an engineering marvel, carved into sheer cliffs with bridges spanning dizzying chasms. It promised prosperity for the region, but it came at a steep cost. Many workers had died during its construction, some from accidents, others from the crushing conditions. Their deaths were marked by whispers of bad luck and curses, but the railway pressed on. When the first train finally ran through the gorge, it vanished without a trace, giving birth to the legend of the ghost train of Bitter Gorge. The inaugural run of the Silver Star, a gleaming steam engine adorned with flags and ribbons, was meant to be a celebration. On board were the railway's finest engineers, wealthy investors, and even a band to mark the occasion. The train departed the station with cheers and fanfare, disappearing into the gorge's winding curves. It never emerged. By dawn, search parties scoured the tracks. No trace of the train, its passengers, or its crew was ever found. The line was declared cursed, and construction halted indefinitely. Years later, settlers began reporting strange occurrences near the abandoned railway. On foggy nights, the mournful whistle of a train echoed through the gorge, though no train ever arrived. Some claimed to see the Silver Star itself, its lights glowing eerily in the mist, gliding along the rusted tracks without sound. Its windows flickered with the shadowy forms of passengers, their faces pale and expressionless. The train came to be known as the Ghost Train of Bitter Gorge, a spectral locomotive doomed to replay its final journey for eternity.
Strangest tale.
One evening, a drifter named Sam Grady arrived in the nearby town of Ridge Hollow. He claimed to have seen the ghost train up close while camping in the gorge. "It ain't no ordinary train," he told the gathered townsfolk in the saloon. "The engine glows like it's alive, and the passengers, they're not human no more. I saw one, face pressed against the glass, eyes hollow as the grave." Sam explained that he had followed the train's spectral path, drawn by a strange compulsion. He found a crumbled section of track deep in the gorge, where the wreckage of the Silver Star lay hidden. The twisted metal and shattered cars were overgrown with moss, but inside, the remains of its passengers sat eerily intact, frozen in their final moments. At the center of the wreck, Sam claimed to have seen something else, a glowing orb hovering above the engine, pulsating with an unnatural light. He fled before he could investigate further. The mystery deepens. Sam's tale ignited curiosity in the town, and a small group of brave or foolish men decided to verify his story. Among them were Tom Bennett, a local blacksmith, Father Isaac, the town's priest, and young Billy Hart, eager to prove his courage. The group ventured into Bitter Gorge on a moonless night. As they approached the spot Sam described, the temperature dropped sharply, and an unnatural stillness settled over the gorge. Then the whistle came, long and mournful, echoing through the cliffs. The Silver Star emerged from the mist, its engine glowing with an eerie blue light. The group froze as the train glided past, its passengers staring out with lifeless eyes. Suddenly, the train stopped and its doors creaked open. A voice, deep, resonant, and otherworldly, called out, "Board now, or be left behind." The terrible truth. Father Isaac, clutching his crucifix, stepped forward. "What do you want?" he demanded. The voice replied, "The souls of the damned ride this train. Those who disturb the dead will join them." Billy, overcome with curiosity, approached the open door despite the others' protests. As he peered inside, he saw the passengers, ghostly figures frozen in eternal torment. Their hollow eyes turned toward him and their hands reached out. The group pulled Billy back just as the doors slammed shut. The train let out a deafening whistle and vanished into the fog, leaving only silence behind. The legend lives on. The group returned to Ridge Hollow, forever haunted by what they had seen. They warned others never to venture into Bitter Gorge, but the legend of the ghost train only grew. Some say it still runs on stormy nights, its whistle echoing across the mountains. Those who see it are said to receive a warning, avoid the gorge, or risk becoming one of its eternal passengers. To this day, no one knows what truly happened to the Silver Star or its ill-fated passengers. But one thing is certain, once you hear the mournful whistle of the ghost train, it's already too late. The Black Hollow Inn. The setting. The Cariboo Wagon Road, carved through the dense forests and treacherous mountains of British Columbia, was a lifeline for prospectors seeking their fortunes in the goldfields of the late 1800s. The journey was grueling, with many losing their way or succumbing to the harsh wilderness. Among the tales whispered around campfires was one of the Black Hollow Inn, a place that was both a blessing and a curse. Appearing only to those who were lost, exhausted, or on the brink of despair, it offered warm beds, hearty meals, and a night's reprieve from the elements. But not all who entered lived to tell the tale. The arrival. One cold autumn evening, a group of 5 prospectors, Henry Cole, Jacob Reed, Thomas Finch, William Bill Carter, and young Eddie Marsh, found themselves stranded. A sudden storm had turned the wagon road into a quagmire of mud, and their supplies were running low. Just as they began to lose hope, a flicker of light appeared through the trees. Following the glow, they stumbled upon the Black Hollow Inn. It was a grand yet unsettling sight. A 2-story building with dark wooden beams, flickering lanterns hanging from its porch, and a sign that creaked in the wind, its words faded but faintly legible. "Welcome, weary travellers," it read. The front door swung open as they approached, and a woman in a flowing black dress stepped out. Her features were strikingly beautiful but cold, her pale blue eyes glinting in the lantern light. "Come in," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "You must be freezing. We've been expecting you." The hospitality. Inside the inn was warm and inviting. A roaring fire crackled in the hearth, and the scent of roasted meat and fresh bread filled the air. The travellers were shown to a dining room where a feast awaited, more food than they'd seen in months. As they ate, the woman introduced herself as Madame Claudine. She asked little of their journey, steering the conversation to lighter topics. Her staff, silent and efficient, moved like shadows, clearing plates and refilling drinks without a word. Eddie, the youngest of the group, voiced what the others were thinking. "This place, it's like it came out of nowhere. We didn't see it marked on any maps." Madame Claudine smiled, her teeth white and sharp. "Many things in the wilderness are not marked, young man." The night. After the meal, they were shown to their rooms. Each was lavishly furnished with feather beds, velvet curtains, and oil lamps that cast a golden glow. Exhausted, the men quickly drifted to sleep, except for Henry, who couldn't shake an uneasy feeling. At midnight, he awoke to a faint sound, a soft humming like a lullaby. He stepped into the hallway, his breath catching as he noticed something strange. The paintings lining the walls. Earlier they had been serene landscapes, but now they depicted horrifying scenes of men and women writhing in agony, their faces frozen in silent screams. Henry rushed to wake Jacob and Thomas, but their rooms were empty. The beds were neatly made, and their belongings were gone. Panic set in. He found Bill in his room, but the older man sat stiffly on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the wall. His lips moved silently, repeating the same phrase, "The road never ends. The road never ends." Eddie's screams echoed down the hallway. Henry followed the sound to the dining room, where he found the young man crouched under a table, his face pale with terror. "She's not human," Eddie whispered. "Madame Claudine, she's not human." The revelation. The dining room was transformed. The feast was gone, replaced by rotting carcasses and maggot-infested bread. The staff, once silent shadows, now revealed their true forms, ghastly, skeletal figures with hollow eyes and skeletal hands. Madame Claudine stood at the center, her beauty replaced by something monstrous. Her eyes glowed red and her mouth stretched into a wide, jagged grin. "Did you enjoy your stay?" she asked, her voice echoing unnaturally. "The road is cruel, but here I offer rest. All I ask is your soul." Henry grabbed Eddie and bolted for the door, but the inn seemed to shift around them, the hallways stretching and bending in impossible ways. From behind, they heard the wails of their companions, their voices merging into a chorus of despair. The escape. Somehow, they found the front door. Henry threw it open, and the 2 men stumbled into the cold night air. Behind them, the inn was no longer a grand structure, but a rotting ruin, its windows dark and its porch sagging. The next morning, they were found by a passing wagon train. When they tried to explain what had happened, the travelers exchanged uneasy glances. "There's no inn around here," one man said. "Not for miles." Henry and Eddie insisted, but their story was met with skepticism. Over time, the horrors they witnessed became legend, a tale told to scare new prospectors traveling the Cariboo Wagon Road. Years later, Henry returned to the spot where he believed the Black Hollow Inn had stood. He found no sign of the building, only a clearing where the grass grew in strange spiraling patterns. At its center lay a single object, a faded sign that read, "Welcome, weary travelers." To this day, some claim to see the lights of the Black Hollow Inn on stormy nights, its doors open wide to those desperate for shelter. Few who enter ever return, and those who do are forever haunted by the horrors within. Let me know if you'd like to expand or tweak this